Okay, so in this video I just wanted to quickly run through the official specs for the S1Rm2. And sort of as you know, the release was kind of like 2 o'clock today, so everything's out, but the pages for this, they're still a little bit behind on kind of updating the site and stuff. So if you go to the site, you might notice that like a lot of the specs and things aren't there, but luckily the pages are there. It's just a case that they haven't linked to them yet. So, I found the pages for the S1Rm2 and the page for the Lumix Flow app. So we'll just have a quick look through. Obviously, I'll leave links to these. So if you don't want to listen to the pointless commentary, you can just go straight there and look at it yourself. But I was just going to run through some of the kind of like new features, some of the bits that have kind of been added, ported across from other cameras, and sort of interesting bits. So yeah, we'll just have a quick run through. I know a lot of these, if you've seen any of the rumors or previous videos, you'll have seen like a lot of these things. We knew it's a full frame L mount S1R2. We knew it had this 44.3 megapixel sensor, 8K 30. We've got 5.9K 60, and that's in ProRes RAW. We've got the phase hybrid AF, and obviously it's L mount because it's full frame. So we've got all those kind of headline bits there, but then because we've got the full page, we can like dive into all of the main features and things. And they talked about a couple of them on the kind of launch, but they don't really go into that much detail, so you kind of have to do a bit of digging if you want to find some of the other bits. But here they've got about the high resolution shot mode, and we're talking like handheld as well, so 177 megapixel handheld high resolution. We've got like the burst mode here, so like 40 frame burst, and then you've got the 10 frame with mechanical. So there's decent modes there for burst, and you've got the pre-burst mode ported over as well. So you've got pre-burst and and that sort of combined. It's not like plus that, but you can use that as well. And then there's some really nice like additional things in here with this. So we've got the Lumix Flow app, which, like I said, I found the site for this as well, which isn't currently live yet. You can't actually download it yet, but I've managed to get the kind of link to this, and you can see like neither of the apps are available, but we can have a run through the page and sort of explain like what it is and what it will do. It should be kind of like imminently appearing, but there's some quite nice like bits on this. So you'll see on here like we've got the so we already had things like active image stabilization, dual image stabilization, all that kind of stuff. It's got 8-stop 5-axis, which is really decent. The S5 Mark II was like a huge step up in that, and then it's always improving, so this is going to be really good. And you can see here the electronic image stabilization actually now features a cropless mode, which is awesome. Like that's really nice. And they've done a lot of the they've kind of been through that sort of stage of it was kind of warping and it did like weird things in the corners, and I think a lot of that is kind of gone, and they've sort of really advanced that. So that's quite nice now. This should be like quite a mature kind of like feature now, the electronic image stabilization. And then you've got all the PDAF stuff that's been in there since, like G9 Mark II, S5 Mark II, Mark IIX, and GH7. So you've got all these bits that come along with that new firmware update that was kind of there as well. So additional things you can kind of focus on. This is one of the things that's really good in it. And I still didn't see this. I saw it in the video that they showed. But for whatever reason, none of the press imagery, they've showed it. But basically, the screen here looks just like the GH6 and GH7 screen, which in my opinion is the best screen Lumix have done. It's really good. But they've sort of taken that a step further. So you already had this bit where you could flip the screen up, and then it's not interfering with all the wires and getting stuck in the viewfinder, and like the GH5 one. It was good, but it was a bit of a mess. So you've got this, but also this kind of slides down, and then it goes even at like a higher angle than you get on the GH6 and 7, and you can even have a tilt down from it, like in the middle. So that's really nice. So you could do like if you're doing event or festival type stuff, you can hold it up and you can see in the screen nicely without it being off to the side, and like because you've got that whole weird like it's slightly weird how you kind of maneuver the camera if the screen's off to the side. It doesn't feel natural, so that's really nice, like a new design for that. So decent. I think that's really good that they've like taken that one step further and not just kind of like used what was there. They've sort of actually built on that and made it even better. And you can kind of see you've got crop and hybrid zoom in there, which again, it's like it's popped up in like a lot of the latest updates and things. It's not all available for MFT, but in the L mount kind of lineup or the full frame lineup, like both crop and hybrid have been introduced into those. You got the kind of standard stuff in there that you'd expect to see, like it's a really rugged body that's like capable of like dust proof, splash proof, freeze proof, all that kind of stuff. Like it's going to be a rugged camera. CF Express Type B and SD card, and also capable of SSD recording like many of the new or newer Lumix cameras. And then you've got like this is really good. So like on the release of it's different for all of them, but when the G8.6 came about, it was a little bit in limbo for like support on raw file types and things being like compatible with it. So right off the bat, they've got Capture One tethering available, and then you've got some of these extra bits as well, like the Lumix Lab support, Lumix Flow, which is the new one, which we'll jump into that tab in a minute and have a little run through it. And you've got the Frame.io support and actually camera to cloud as well. So that's the Adobe one as well. So you've got quite a few bits and pieces there. And then into the main specs of it, you can see like we've really covered kind of a lot of this already. You've got like everything there we've just kind of covered through. And you've got the weight of it actually is not that much heavier than the S1Rm2, and it's really not that far off the GH6 and 7, which obviously have got the big fan on the back. You've got the fan just behind the viewfinder on this one, but it's quite a chunky design on the MFT one. So like the weight of it's actually quite reasonable. And then you could go forever getting lost in these specs. I'm just going to kind of do like headlines of it. So they've got there's a new picture profile, which is the Cinelight K2. You've got the we've already been through like the stabilization, all that kind of stuff. You've got lots of pre-ported features, like you've got pre-burst, you've got proxy, Frame.io, SSD, that handheld shot mode we've already talked about. But then you've actually got some nice additional, if I could spell false properly, you've got some nice additional features, like you can see here. For the first time, they've introduced false color into the camera, so that's great. That's something people have been asking for ages. I mean, most people that kind of film or shoot video on like these types of cameras, they usually use external monitors that have false color. But for me, like I really like to have that in camera. So the fact that they've started doing that is great. If it gets ported back to some of the old cameras as well, like that would be brilliant. I can imagine they'll probably try and port that back if they can to a few other ones. So that's kind of, even if you're not in the market for this camera, that kind of makes it a bit more exciting that there could be a nice firmware update on the horizon, because that's not really one of those features where it's kind of like this is a showstopper that people will buy the camera for. Like it's another great tool. You've already got like your you've already got like your scopes, and you've got your histogram, and you've got all that other kind of stuff, but now you've got like this as an additional thing. So it'd be nice if they can kind of bring that back to other cameras. You've got that cropless new image stabilization, the electronic stabilization, the new screen, and then we've got the with this, you can see at the bottom of here, there was a lot of kind of rumors that it was going to be internal 32-bit float, which I was very skeptical about, because it kind of makes the XLR2 redundant, and also it's probably not something that many people kind of, I guess, want if they're using XLR mics and that kind of stuff anyway, if they're really serious about like recording sort of top level audio. So it's it is required that you get the XLR2 adapter, which is the same as the GH7. So to me that's not a big surprise, but I think a lot of people kind of assuming it was going to be internal, and that's not the case, unfortunately. So I don't know if that's going to be a bit of a disappointment for some people, but it sort of is what it is, really. It's like, I think most people kind of saw that coming, that it was going to be, you'd have to buy the XLR adapter. So, you know, yeah, that's sort of is what it is. So you can go through this, like I say, in the specs. You can see like all the video modes. Obviously I'm not going to run through them because there's absolutely the thousands of them, and sort of all the little extra bits. I've just picked out the kind of newer kind of stuff, and you know, we'll jump into like the Lumix Flow bit, but we've got you've got bits about like the DCC18, which is the USB-C coupler. I've got a video about that, so I'll link out to that so you can kind of check that out. You've got additional things like, I think I'd said this before, but the proxy recording is in there too, which is quite nice. But yeah, you've got, so here we've got the Lumix Flow app, which they've talked about, which I was a little bit sort of hesitant about, because I just thought, do you need this as another thing? Could you not just use Lumix Lab for it? But then actually it sounds like what the app is basically more like it's more of an organizational tool. So you basically, you do your kind of shot lists and things like that. You can add metadata to them to say, you know, this was a keeper, maybe a secondary backup shot, all that kind of stuff. And then as you're doing it, it like I say, it's adding metadata to it, and then it exports, they've said, an XML file to the card, and then when you import it into your actual editor, it will organize some of those files for you. So originally I thought this was going to be like an app for doing editing, and I just thought that just seems mad for like this kind of camera, like to release alongside it, but it makes a lot more sense now. And to be honest, you know, that's like, it sounds like quite a nice idea. You know, I'm using a camera that it's not going to come back to, so like that's a bit of a shame. It would be nice if it came back a bit further. Even the G9 Mark II is not on that list, but that potentially, you know, I would say it's because it's like a photo orientated, but then so's the, you know, the S5 is supposed to be, and the X is supposed to be the video one. So I don't know if they'll kind of, you know, extend like the support for this, maybe, like who knows. But the good news is it's actually for both the iOS store or the Apple store, and for Android or Google Play as well, because there was kind of like reports it was just going to be for Apple, and that would have been, you know, a bit sad for like a lot of people that are using Android phones, which is like, it's a big majority of people. So, well, you know, it's certainly a big user base. But you can kind of see on here, it's got like, it kind of tells you a bit about it, and you've got, you can see that it's actually tethered. And this is like one of those things where I'd sort of mentioned this before, like, you know, you may or may not have seen videos on this channel, but I'm always kind of talking about the lack of USB connectivity on the cameras, and I would really like it if they had one for data and one for power. So, you know, you could plug in a power bank, and then you could plug in your SSD. And then obviously you've got this thing as well, which is like another kind of, it also needs a USB port. But with the S1R, you know, they have brought in not brought in, but some of the older cameras like the GH6 and 7, it didn't actually have a battery grip, or the option for a battery grip, whereas this one's got a battery grip, you know, hot swappable battery grip. So, you know, fair enough, that kind of takes care of some of that stuff. Or you know, you could use a V mount. It's quite a big camera, but you've got a couple of options there, at least for power, where I sort of felt like on the GH cameras, there's a bit of a shame that you didn't have like that option for like hot swappable, and then being able to kind of do like other things on there, like run an SSD, because the two go hand in hand. You know, you want long battery life and lots of storage. So, or certainly for like the kind of long form stuff that I'm doing. But yeah, you can see here, like it's got essentially what it's doing. So, you know, you can make up your storyboards, set your shot lists. It'll automatically kind of sort it all out for you. So you're essentially just taking a little bit of, you add in a bit of prep time, and you're removing a bit of post-production time, because you're sorting all your stuff out up front. So it's quite it's a nice idea. I can kind of see them expanding that a little bit. I was a bit negative about that to start with, but I don't actually think that's too bad, to be honest. That could be quite a nice little tool. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And then essentially the S1Rm2, they said it's going to ship in March, so, you know, pre-orders are already available. I've stuck a link in the description where you can kind of find it and stuff, and obviously links to these 2 pages, which eventually they're just going to be available on the Lumix site, but right now they're not there, so you can just access them through these links. And then yeah, the pricing for it, they've kind of said 3299 USD. And that translates to just under 3,000. It's like 2,999 in British pounds, which is what I've kind of seen it for across a couple of shops now. And you know, like stuff's just coming out all the time for this, because the launch was literally like an hour ago. So it's all kind of like, you know, they're probably in a mad rush getting all this stuff out now. But that was just a kind of a quick overview, and obviously I'm sure YouTube's going to have another 100 odd videos that you can kind of watch on this, but it was just a bit of a run through of kind of what's there and a few nice new features that seem to be added into it. So yeah, let me know what you think of the camera in the comments.